And I'd like for us to turn over to Matthew 23. It's good to be back here, and I think where perhaps we can look to the Lord to add to us. And we pray that as we reach out in the community more so, we'll see some results. And I have to take my own advice. This is not always easy for me. You know, I've been preaching for years that the Great Commission is not outcome-based, that we were commanded to go regardless of any results, especially regardless of good results. You know, where people are just, flocking to the Lord's house because of your witness, your door hanger, your tract, your phone call, your personal conversation. Well, that's not the case. And so, discouragement is nearby. Okay, it's always standing in the wings. So I have to, as I remind others, that their drive to reach people is not based on any outcome. I have to remember that as well. And so I pray that even though we may not have a large result, a good result, that we planted the word into their hearts and minds, and they're accountable for it. And God has smiled on us because of our witness, regardless of any result. And He smiles on you and your witness, regardless of if they come or not. The people you've invited, if they don't come, you planted the seed or you watered the seed. And you've done what God has asked you to do. So you're not accountable for their blood. Okay? It would be nice to have them come, though, wouldn't it? But that's not our part. Our part is to plant or to water. God does that. Okay? All right, so I have to remind myself of that. Pray for your pastor that God will continue to remind me of that. Today is what the world calls Palm Sunday. And the reason they call it Palm Sunday is because this was the time in Jesus' ministry that was drawing to a close, and it was now time in this third year to actually follow through with why He was sent and to wrap up this mission of why He came to die for the world. And so He's entering into Jerusalem. And in preparation for this, He sent a couple of His disciples out to fetch a colt, a donkey, and to bring it back to Him, whereupon He would ride into Jerusalem and not be on foot. And all of this, of course, was pointing to an earlier prophecy by Zechariah. That Zechariah said, "Behold, your king comes to you, lowly, meek, riding upon the foal of the donkey." And so He fulfilled that. So let's look at it. But I want to look at that, but I also want to look at just an overall expression we find in the Bible a few times, about 11 times or so. The expression is, "and ye," plural, "and ye would not." We're going to look at that phrase, "and ye would not." Okay? But we're going to start by looking at this passage here, Matthew 23, at verse 37, where Jesus, as a result of His reception, and again, the reception started out fine. The people at large, the multitudes, for the most part, were lauding and rejoicing in His entrance. Hosea, praising Him and acknowledging Him and His character. Little did they perhaps realize that within just a short amount of time, just a few days, they would be turning against and reversing their feeling toward Jesus and hollering out, "Crucify Him." Talk about extremes. And so Jesus, realizing all that was going on and knowing the fickleness of people, announced in verse 37, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets." Now He's digging back into their history as a city, where Andrew took us there on a historical journey in his PowerPoint on Jerusalem and the early foundings of that city, especially where the covenant people intersected it. It's had a long history with the Lord, and it's where the Lord's base camp. That's where He wants to plant His Son to rule the nations. And so as He reaches back into their histories, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee? How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. And so here we have set forth two strong wills. A very strong will on the part of God through Christ to establish the city, to establish the inhabitants of the city, to set them on high, to gather them together and fulfill his long desired purpose for them. That's a strong will on God's part. He wants that earnestly. But then the opposing strong opinion or will was on the part of the people. The people that he wanted to bring in close to him, as a chicken would gather and protect her chicks under her wings. And so as that, he wanted to do that for them. They would not. Means they willed not to. They exercised their will to not allow him to do that. So that when he would send a prophet to the city to proclaim his word, his message, or perhaps a prophecy of impending doom, they would mistreat the prophets. They would kill the prophets, or stone the prophet, or arrest the prophet, or drop that prophet down into a what? A well. Okay, like Jeremiah. Okay, where there's into the muck and the mire. Okay, and leave them there. And so they would horribly mistreat these men of God that God had sent to them out of his kindness. So that's what Jesus is referring to. And so he not only states his purpose, God's purpose, but he also states their reaction to that purpose. And as I said a moment ago, when you can witness to people and you hope for the right reaction, the reaction that will save them. For their very own good, you come to them with that good news. And just as you found it, so you want them to find it, because it brings such joy and purpose for you. And how sad it is for them to exercise their will against that good news. Isn't that awful? We realize how awful it is. But keep this in mind, that perhaps we didn't receive it at first either. And so perhaps we broke someone's heart when they came to us and we didn't accept it right away either. And so they were praying for us, and they wanted to just grab us and shake us and say, why can't you see this? It's for your own good. Well, some of us eventually, of course, we did see it. So there's still hope. There's still hope for others. Depends on what happens in their life. But here's the thing. As like Sister Lana, she's made it known that she loves the Lord. She's made it known that she goes to church. She's made it known that she's a Christian. And so when people have something to do with the Bible, or a class at the university, or any such thing, because she's planted that seed, she's watered that seed, she's asked the church to back her up with opportunities, guess what? She's now the go-to person in her department, where they'll ask her questions now about the Bible. So she has set herself up for those opportunities. And so, and I know many of you have also, you set yourself up, you let people around you know who you are and what you stand for. So all you have to do now, and this is the tough part, I suppose, is just to be consistent with it. So that, you've let them know, okay, but maybe a lot of other people have let them know too, but they're gone. It's now on your shoulders to be consistent with what you told them, so that as they continue to watch you, they'll see that consistency, and your testimony will ring even louder to them because of your day-to-day continuance and backing up what you told them earlier. Okay? And I've said this before, and I've used this expression before, that the unsaved world will, like a glass. This is probably a poor example, but a nice clear glass. Okay, we want to find out if this is glass or crystal, so we ping it. And crystal will have a certain ring to it. Okay, and glass more of a thud. Okay, and crystal more of a nice sound, a ring or a ping to it. Okay, so they'll be constantly pinging you. They'll be watching you to see how consistent you are to your words. And so there's a lot of the work after the initial announcement. a lot of work involved. And so we find this city was brought under God's radar and within the scope of his purpose, and now it was up to them to fulfill that purpose and to grow into this great potential. And that's what Brother John McClung would tell us in seminary. He said, boys, he said, what you need to do is to learn what God wants for you, and then to grow into that potential that God has for you, the potential of him using you in your service. Grow up into it. Okay? Quite a challenge. Well, Jerusalem failed on that note. They failed to arrive at the full potential that God wanted for them. Why? Because they would not. They refused. They exercised their choice. And so as a result, he says in verse 38, behold, your house is, you might even say, is as a result of your choice, is now left desolate. And so the temple that they so cherished would now be emptied of God's power and presence. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth till you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Well, before they would make that announcement, that prophetic announcement, they're going to be forced to be put into a situation where it will be a squeeze called the tribulation, the Antichrist raining down upon them, trying to get at them, and they're under such duress and stress and pressure that when they see Jesus returning, instead of rejecting him again, they reach out and cry out for his deliverance and say, blessed is he now, the Son of God. Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. See, they didn't believe that he was coming in the name of the Lord. They questioned his authority, who he was. Okay? Tell us plainly if you are the Christ. So they kept questioning and challenging him in this. But he's saying there's coming a day, people, that you will reach out and you will say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. So, well, a lot of time will have happened before that happens. But nonetheless, it was as a result because they would not. And so I want us to look at that expression, they would not, and you would not, and find it a few other places or forms of it throughout the Scriptures. And let's go back to the Old Testament, to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. Deuteronomy 28. Uh, 62. Verse 58, if thou wilt not observe to do all the words, this is the second generation now that's come out about to enter the land, Deuteronomy, the second giving of the law. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God, then the Lord will make thy plagues, well, the Old King James says wonderful. We have a different usage of that word today. Terrible or New King James? Extraordinary, okay. In other words, they'll be magnified. The Lord will make thy plagues, magnified, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Those diseases will cleave to you. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas you are as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to nothing, and you shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And I'm looking for my phrase, and I'm not seeing it. And you would not is the phrase that I'm looking for. Yeah, but I can't find it here. Well, that's the wrong phrase, or the wrong place. All right. Well, the idea is that God would say certain things, make certain commandments, and then he would stand back and wait for their response and their reaction. And many times, whether Old or New Testament, the people of God, get this, it was the people of God. Now, God would well expect the Amorites or any other nation to not follow his will, not even want to follow his will. That's expected. They had carved out their own gods, their own systems, and Yahweh certainly wasn't someone that they wanted to bow down to. So that's expected. But when he approached his own people, and it turned out that ye would not, that's alarming, especially with the blessings and the intent that God laid out before them of all the good that he wanted to pour on them. It's alarming that they would not bend the knee to him out of respect and out of appreciation. So, did anyone find that? Missing that phrase, and ye would not. Got the wrong passage there. No, I'm just not seeing it. All right.
There's Deuteronomy 8:20 possibly.
8:20?
Yeah.
What is that one?
As the nations which the Lord destroyed before your face, so shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God.
That's it.
I think you said 28. It must have been 8.
Yeah. So it's 8 what?
20?
8:20. Well, that was close. All right, well, let's go over there, what Andrew just read. So keep in mind now, here's the difference between this generation and the generation of their forefathers who came out of Egypt. The difference is, now they have a longer time to have observed God and his ways. Keep in mind that being captives in Egypt, they didn't have a close relationship with their God. He was kind of a distant God. You know, the God of Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob. They had to reach way back, okay, for that connection. And being slaves in Egypt for all that time, no doubt they picked up a lot of junk from the Egyptians, a lot of their, their deities and such. And so the relationship was, just kind of nominal. So bringing them out from that situation and now reintroducing himself in a closer situation, they had to learn what he expected from them. And they had to learn to recognize his goodness. And that took some doing, because they rebelled so many times and wanted to go back to Egypt. Can you believe that? Wanted to go back to Egypt under the whips of the taskmasters, although that's not really what they were looking for, just to go back and get the food and such. But God says, no, you don't want to go back there. You don't want to go back there. Just let me lead you. I'll provide for you. Well, they just kept coming up against him and against him. The difference between that generation and this one is now they have a 40-year history of God's working in their lives. Now they see everything he said he would do, he did. All the promises he kept. All the warnings, he followed through with them. So they've got this longer standing history with God, and now you think they should know better now. And so, would you say verse 20? So now in Deuteronomy 8:20, as the nations which the Lord destroyed before your face, so shall you perish, because you would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God. And that's prefaced by verse 19, or 18, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth. God provides for you, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to thy fathers, as it is this day. And it shall be, if thou do at all forget the Lord thy God, and walk after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish. Just like the nations that came up against God perish. So God's always true to his word. Whether a blessing or a cursing, he's going to be true to his word. And so we have this expression, and you would not. Now, being a free moral agent and having the ability to choose has its good side and its bad side. The good side is that we're not robots, and God doesn't treat us like robots. That he's created us with the ability to choose. That's the good side. That's the good thing. We can actually make a choice and live with that choice. That's good. The bad side is that sometimes those choices are not the best choices. Sometimes God steps back and lets us make poor choices so that we can learn from that poor choice, that experience, and hopefully we come out a better person as a result of it. More seasoned, wiser, and more on our knees before God rather than, full of pride or whatever it might be. It's all about learning. It's all about maturing in the Lord. And so that was this generation. Are you wiser now because of your forefathers, how they resisted to go into the land, and how I had to keep you out in the wilderness for 40 years until they all died because they were not worthy to go in? Have you learned anything from that? Well, at first they did. At first they did. They were all gung-ho at first. Joshua, his leadership, they were pretty gung-ho. But then as time moved on, there's your consistency factor again. Gung-ho about serving the Lord. First get saved, all excited, and then when reality settles in and you realize that the Christian life isn't all what maybe someone had told you it was. They built it up. It's just this, this wonderful joy, and you're tight with God and all this. Wow, that sounds pretty good. Then the reality sets in, and you realize that you've just made yourself an enemy of Satan, and he hammers at you, and he hammers at you. And where is this coming from? I didn't have these kind of problems when I was lost. Okay? Well, you have them now. You have them now. Okay? But at the same time that the devil has made you his target, remember, you asked Christ to come into your life. You have him too. Okay? And what does the Bible say? Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. So we have to kind of understand the ratio there. We have a stronger witness and power within us. And so it's not always going to be good. So the test, as Brother Rick Howard would say, the greatest test is the test of time. Will this, in the end, or sometime in the middle, or anywhere along the journey, be as important to you as it was in the beginning? Well, I hope so, because that's what God wants, and that's what he's going to reward. Our confidence being every bit as much as strong as in the end as it was in the beginning. And we read about God's people in the New Testament, even here, where the emphasis is on the end. On the end. Because anyone could start out and even follow through for a short while, but it's the duration, it's the long haul that counts. Because over the course of time, you see people drop off. They drop this way, they fall this way, and pretty soon you're just down to just a few, okay, who make it to the end. And that's the encouragement of all of God's people, is to hang in there toward the end. The beginning is great. The journey is wonderful, or should be, or could be. It's the end that counts. The end. And so that's what he's trying to get them to understand. Along the way, don't go after other gods. He so desperately wants us to have to turn toward him and to benefit from all of his goodness. The problem lies with us. The problem is on us. Well, we don't receive those blessings. Well, let's try this one, Andrew. Let's try Deuteronomy 1, 25 and 26. Let's see if I'm close.
Looks good.
It looks good. All right. Moses is recounting the generation that came out, it's good to look back sometimes at people's failings. It's good to look back at times at our own failings, so that we get perspective. You have to have something to tie to measure by. And so, in verse 19, as he's taking them back, and when we departed from Horeb, that's where the law was given, and when we departed from Horeb, you went through all that great and terrible wilderness, which you saw by the way of the mountain of the Amorites, as the Lord our God commanded us, and we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said unto you, that their forefathers, and many of them as well, but he said, I said unto you, you are come unto the mountain of the Amorites, which the Lord our God doth give unto us. Behold, the Lord thy God hath set the land before you, thee, go up and possess it, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath said unto thee, fear not, neither be discouraged. And you came near unto me, every one of you, and said, we will send men before us. They shall search out the land, and bring us word again by what way we must go up, and into what cities we shall come. And the saying pleased me well. And I took 12 men of you, one of a tribe, and they turned and went up into the mountain, and came into the valley of Eshcol, and searched it out. And they took of the fruit of the land in their hands, and brought it down unto us, and brought us word again, and said, it is a good land which the Lord our God doth give us. Notwithstanding, in spite of the fact that the report came back that from your own peers that it was a good land, they witnessed it. They wouldn't steer you wrong. They wouldn't say it was a good land if it wasn't, because that was their inheritance as much as it was yours, and so they would give an honest report as far as the land and the blessings. So it wasn't the report or the fact of the land was the issue. It's what they did with the information. Notwithstanding, you would not go up, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God. And you murmured in your tents, and said, because the Lord hated us, he hath brought us forth out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites, to destroy us. Oh my. People's perspective on things. How is it that, I don't get it. I don't get it in my own life when I'm, being silly.
Get an argument from me.
I don't understand sometimes, logic, thinking, perspective, perception. I don't understand it in them. I don't understand it in myself. I don't understand it when I see it in others. There's just one common denominator in all that craziness, and that's that we're people. And we're not always consistent. But think about this for just a moment. Moses is referring to a people that God delivered from slavery, who could not deliver themselves in 100 years, or 200, or 300, or 400. They couldn't deliver themselves. They couldn't free themselves. They had no way of doing that. And yet God freed them miraculously, right up to the very moment, miraculously, opening up the Red Sea and destroying the armies of Egypt, bringing them over safely. And for them to discount that and to disregard that event that echoed throughout the Old Testament in the writings of the prophets, pointing back to that tremendous day, to disregard it and to regard God or have a new perception of God as your enemy after having done that? That just boggles me. We have to lock in on some things. There are some things we have to kind of lock down as far as how we view them and to cherish them and to hold them dear. And one of those things is that God is not our enemy. We've got to lock in on that one. He's not our enemy. And perhaps if we feel that he's our enemy or become our enemy, maybe it's not him being our enemy. Maybe we've distanced ourselves from him. And so our perception is skewed so that we put the blame back on him that he's attacking us. When that's not the case at all. We're avoiding him. Truthfully, right? And so it's not that he's become our enemy necessarily. It's that we have plugged our ears and are not listening to him anymore. As far as the enemy part, I guess maybe the reason they would think that is because if they're not listening, and it boils down to, and ye would not, then they leave him no choice, we leave him no choice, but to take out the paddle. I guess I can say that openly and safely now, huh? To take out the paddle and to start swatting, to start spanking us for our rebelliousness. You mean because he hates us? That's what they say. Do you hate us? No, but because he loves us. But how their image of God changed, and all because they would not. God didn't move, they moved. They murmured in their tents. They reasoned among themselves, talked about among themselves. They didn't invite God into the tent. They walked into the tent, they closed the flap, tied it up, and started talking among themselves and reasoning among themselves, leaving God out of the picture. Funny how we can just grow something when we don't invite God in to give us balanced perspective and the true reality of it. This thing just kind of grows and grows and grows, all distorted. Until he says, okay, well, I'll show you the truth. Next thing you know, you are under his chastening. Because he loves us. And so, but they questioned God, they challenged God, and they questioned his motives. So it appears to us now, instead of being our friend and leading us out of Egypt, you brought us out here to die. Well, I don't know. Is it a safe thing to do, Noah, to accuse God of ill intent like that? I don't think you're on safe ground when you start delving into judging God's motives. See, all you have to go on is the action and the deed, the releasing of you from slavery. Now you're trying to bring into something a motive and accusing him of an ill motive. Wow. Not good. All because they would not. And so, dangerous ground. In verse 42, so far so good. Since Andrew got us off on a good start here. 39, moreover your little ones, which you said should be a prey, and your children, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither, and unto them will I give it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, turn you, and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. So again, referring to the decision at Kadesh Barnea by their parents, their forefathers. Then you answered and said unto me, we have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight according to all that the Lord our God commanded us. And when you had girded on every man his weapons of war, you were ready to go up into the hill. Well, no, I suppose that's good. On the surface, that appears to be good. Now you're ready to serve the Lord. But you know what? Sometimes God has a timing. And not only is there a timing, but in that moment when he says do something, and we balk at it, and we resist, there was our moment to bend our knee and say, yes, Lord. Because then he gets the honor and the glory. In that moment when he's making the command and we yield, that's when he gets the extreme honor and glory, because we listen to it. If we say no and resist that command, and we push our pride out in front of us, then there is no honor or glory. If he then steps in and has to get our attention by some other means, so that instead of just a command and just at face value, yes, Lord, okay, you said it, I'll do it. He has to do something else to get your attention, so that now you want to. You've stripped God of honor and glory by just simply doing it the first time. Now you're doing it from a different perspective and maybe a different motive. Now there's maybe a different level, a greater level of fear. There's a lot of other components come in that cloud the glory he would have otherwise received. It's now, you might say, tainted. And so when he flexed his muscle and they wept, then they said, okay, well, we'll go up now. You missed it. You missed it. You absolutely missed it. And so God was now not going to bring them the honor and the blessing as he would have. So there's something to be said for us listening to the voice of God in the pocket of time that he wants us to listen, so that we can maximize his honor and glory, and of course, as a benefit, our blessing. If we refuse, we minimize the blessing. We depreciate his honor. And so we need to be careful about listening, and the timing of things is very, very crucial. So they tried to do this on their own, and they failed miserably. And so, 42, the Lord said unto me, say unto them, go not up, neither fight, for I am not among you, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spake unto you, and you would not hear, but rebelled against me commandment. But rebelled against the commandment of the Lord, and went presumptuously up into the hill. And the Amorites which dwelt in that mountain came out against you, and chased you as bees do, and destroyed you in Seir, even unto Hormah. So again, there's a pocket of time to hear the Lord for maximum glory for him, benefit for us. That's what he wants. What stops us from that is, ye would know. Well, God can turn the tables on us. In verse 45, and you returned and wept before the Lord after the defeat. And you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not hearken to your voice, nor give ear unto you. So God can turn the tables on us. It says, because ye would not, therefore I will not. And so all he wants is for us to get it, that he is on our side. He wants the best for us. To listen to him the first time around, and not when we decide to listen to him. That maximizes his honor. It shows other people around us as well as ourselves that he's worth submitting to. He's worth being our king, worth being our Lord, worth being our master. It's not at our whim. He's worth every bit of it. Every ounce of service. He's worth every minute, everything we do for him. He's worth it. And all he wants us to do is recognize that worth. And then he's going to say, you know what, because you recognized what I was trying to do for you, I'm going to reciprocate all that honor you gave to me, and I'm going to dump it back down upon you. But you had to give it first. It had to go up first before it can come down. And there has to be something up there for him to bring down, right? Isn't that what Jesus said? Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Because they're kept safe there. No one's going to steal them. They're not going to rust out. They're safe there. And I'm going to bring those treasures back with me. Everything you've set up is coming back. If there's very little set up, if your chamber of treasures is kind of empty, then there's not much to bring back. So we got to fill that up with our loyal, loving, faithful service unto him. So that there is something for him to bring back in the way of a robe and a crown and ruling with him. And the right, I won't say right, I'll say privilege to fellowship with him in the city. That room can't be empty up there. We've got to fill it with treasure, okay? Giving honor to the Lord. All right, well, I want to close this morning in Psalm 81. Psalm 81, this pretty much sums it up. As far as, where am I going here? Psalm 81. As far as our interrelation with God, interaction with God, 10 through 16. I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. See what I mean? By this keeps popping up. This event keeps, it was haunting them. It just wouldn't go away, because it was the pivotal point. It's when they became a nation, and God was setting out to fulfill the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob of them actually inheriting this land. Huge moment in their history. And it kept being brought up time after time for a good reason, to remind them. I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Open thy mouth wide, and I will fill it. Wow. But my people would not hearken to my voice, and Israel would not of me. Israel would have nothing to do with me. They started carving gods out of rocks and tree trunks, making gold and silver idols. They would have nothing to do with me. It started first in the northern kingdom and then filtered on down to the southern kingdom, until I had to kind of just kick them all out, pretty much. There's always been some remnant of Israel, but so I gave them up unto their own heart's lust, and they walked in their own counsel. But you know what? That's not what God wanted. Oh, that my people had hearkened unto me. This is now you want to talk about God's motive and getting into his heart. He's saying it right here. He's laying his heart bare. This is what the intention I had for you. This is, talk about motive. You want to judge my motive? This is it right here. Oh, that my people had hearkened unto me, and Israel had walked in my ways. I should soon have subdued their enemies and turned my hand against their adversaries. The haters of the Lord should have submitted themselves unto him, but their time should have endured forever. He should have fed them also with the finest of the wheat, and with honey out of the rock should I have satisfied thee. Why didn't that happen? Because they will not. They exercised their free will and said, we will not serve God. So the question then is, do they deserve bridal relationship? Well, no one really deserves it. But when it's all said and done, if that kind of stubbornness wins bridal relationship, then what's the point of serving? And we throw it back on our own selves. While we're pointing a finger at them, what about us? The way we live our lives. If we can live it haphazardly and just choose to serve or not to serve, or whenever we feel like it, will that win us bridal relationship? I think God is no fool. And if we mock him, we're going to reap the consequences. Everyone in that bride, whoever it is, will be there because God says, you deserve it. We don't deserve it. But there's your perspective. He says, I say you deserve it because of what you did for me. End of story. You know you didn't deserve it on your own, but I say you deserve it. You're in. That's how it's going to be. On our part, we say we don't deserve it. Therefore, we press toward the prize for the mark for the prize of the high calling on our end. We just keep pushing through. And consistency will win the day. Shall we stand?